Hello, my loves. Today we're going to look at some more Reddit stories, and if you've enjoyed a Reddit story, why don't you consider hitting the subscribe button? Maybe that's the notification bell too, and let's start with today's story. Story 1, Father's Day. Me, 38 years old, and my daughter, 5 years old. When my daughter was born, my husband, 33-year-old, went above and beyond with everything. I had a cesarean section, and it took me a while to recover. Our daughter was born a month before Father's Day, and we couldn't do anything fun on Father's Day since I was recovering. My husband was so amazing. I was essentially just changing and feeding our daughter and going to the bathroom. My husband was doing everything else while also giving me breaks and taking care of our daughter. Honestly, I felt a little useless. I could tell it was starting to wear on him, but he didn't show it. He always smiled and assured me he was okay. On Father's Day, every time our daughter started fussing, I'd try to get up to take care of her, but he kept getting up and telling me he would take care of her. I felt so terrible since he spent his first Father's Day taking care of our daughter and doing pretty much everything else while I sat around all day. The night of Father's Day, our daughter was asleep, and I apologized for not doing anything for him. I felt so bad that I was almost crying. My husband hugged me and assured me I didn't have to apologize. I remember exactly what he said. He said, "Honey, you don't have to be sorry. You're still recovering. You need all the rest you can get. I love you so much, and your health matters more than a day." My husband went back to work once I was fully recovered, and he was still so amazing with helping out with our daughter. Since my husband was working, I'd get up at night when our daughter needed us, and when he got home from work, he'd always take our daughter so I could get some sleep. 5 years later, he's still an amazing dad. Our daughter's a daddy's girl, and it's the cutest thing ever. Every now and then, I see posts like the one I read where the husband and wife aren't getting along after their baby is born, and I think about how much I love my husband and how lucky I am that he's been so amazing with our daughter. I hear about couples whose love fades after a while, and I feel so lucky because my husband and I are still madly in love after 13 years. Story 2, Crazy Wife. My husband and I have a long-term family friend, John, who is basically the mayor everywhere we go. My children call him Uncle, and we've been this guy's ride-or-die bestie through his first wife, 3 girlfriends, 1 serious relationship, and his new wife. All that to say, given the length of our friendship, we know his family and his other friends. About 10 years ago, John's friend Dave and his wife, Emily, happened to be in the area with their kids and wanted to come hang out with us and several other couples during a beach vacation we were all on together, where several people/couples/families chipped in for rooms of a large beach house. Dave and Emily weren't invited, but just because no one knew them, but we invited John's friends to come hang out all day. Emily ends up talking with me quite a bit. My husband is not in town yet and joining our family the next day, and largely it was nice to have company. We talk almost all afternoon. She's acting as though we are long-lost sisters. Most of the conversation I enjoyed, but it became clear pretty quickly that she didn't really know who she was, what she was doing, and she tried to give me her version of social media therapy on the beach, and after the second beer it was full-on Dr. Phil and difficult to steer the conversation. I was annoyed, but okay. I had an older kid there, so other priorities. It was clear she was very not entirely sober. I choose to not think anything of the conversation missteps. After a fun day of beach drinking and kids playing, it was decided that Dave and Emily couldn't drive and it would just be easier to squeeze them into our beach house for a night. Dave decides to go put his kids to bed in one of the children's bedrooms. He must have passed out because he never returned. This left his wife Emily upstairs hanging out. After an hour more of all the kids in bed and adults upstairs playing cards, Emily decided to show everyone her yoga skills and gets quickly overtly sexual with the men in the room. She starts doing handstand splits on the top of the couch. She's asking some of the guys in the room to help her do couple moves where it takes two to get her into the right position. This went on for at least a half hour. At one point, she sits on the shoulders of the younger solo guy on the couch, Sean, and he stood up trying to get her to stop. She ends up spun around his head with her crotch in his face for a split second, and she made some comment about whether he could smell her poocha. Story 3: How Broken My Family Was. It all started in 2001 when my parents got married and had my brother in 2003. At that time, my dad was a pretty big drinker, often going on solo and group trips where they drank and partied spare parts. My mother gets tired of this because she doesn't get any attention. When I was born in 2010, she threatened my dad with divorce if he didn't stop drinking and actually contribute to our upbringing. My father agreed and stopped drinking and did not go on those trips anymore. Everything was very good at that time. He only focuses on work and family. Fast forward to 2019, and my dad's business took a hit. My mom suddenly started getting mad because we were getting too close with our dad and kept calling him a drunk, even though he hadn't had a drink in the last 15 years. They started fighting frequently, and it obviously affected me a lot. Eventually, my dad just stopped talking to my mom and stayed home a lot more. So guess what? My mom needed someone else to take her frustration out on, and that meant she started taking it out on me and my brother. She became super irritable and critical of everything we did, no matter how small. The atmosphere at home turned toxic. My brother and I tried to stay out of her way, but her negativity was inescapable. I started feeling anxious all the time, constantly worrying about the next fight or what I might do to set her off. My grades started slipping, and concentrating on anything became impossible. My brother, being older, tried to shield me from the worst of it, but he had his own struggles to deal with. Things hit a breaking point in 2022 when my parents had a massive argument, and my dad moved out temporarily. During that time, my mom's anger only got worse, and she became even more demanding and critical. My brother and I felt like we were walking on eggshells every day. Eventually, my dad decided he couldn't stay away any longer and moved back in, trying to make things better, but the damage had already been done. My parents continued living together, but there was a noticeable rift between them. They barely spoke to each other, and when they did, it was often through gritted teeth. Seeing my parents like this was heartbreaking. I often found myself wishing for the days when things were good, even if just for a little while. My brother and I tried to support each other as much as we could, finding solace in our shared experiences. As I got older, I started to understand that my parents had their own issues they were struggling with, but it didn't make the situation any easier to bear. I began seeking help from friends and school counselors, trying to find ways to cope with the ongoing stress at home. In the end, I learned that sometimes, no matter how much you wish for things to get better, you have to take care of yourself first. My brother and I focused on our education and our future, hoping to break free from the cycle of negativity that had taken over our home. We knew our parents loved us, even if they didn't always show it in the best way, and we held on to the hope that one day, things might improve for all of us. Story 4: Growing Up in an Abusive Home. I, 21-year-old, was in and out of the foster system. My 20-year-old brother was adopted the first time we entered the system. I wasn't allowed to be because my mother decided that she wanted me. 6 years after she got me back from the system, my mom had another child with a different guy. At this point, I was 6, turning 7 a month before my youngest brother was born. My mom sent me to stay with my brother's grandparents every weekend and any time I didn't have school. My brother's grandfather started to molest me at the age of 7. After each time he did it, he would give me money or take me to the mall and let me get whatever I wanted. He would show me porn movies and tell me that's what he was going to do with me. Once I told him to stop and he pulled out a shotgun from under his bed and told me, "If you tell anyone, I will kill your brother and mom in front of you." The day I turned 9 was the first time he raped me. After he took me to the mall. I tried to tell my mom about it, but she ignored me and hit me for making up stories. When I was 11, a family friend, police officer, asked me if I was okay and if there anything happening with my brother's grandfather, and I said no. Around this time, my mom started using meth again and she basically disappeared. My brother and I saw her 2 times a week on her down days. When I did see her, she would scream at me and beat me. During this time, we started going over to my brother's grandparents' house more due to my mom wanting to throw parties at the house. 5 months after my 13th birthday, I tried to kill myself. I was getting bullied and tormented at school. Outside of school, I was getting screamed at, beat, and raped. I couldn't handle it anymore. My mom's boyfriend at the time found me on the bathroom floor oating and called 911. When I was 14, I decided I didn't want to go over there anymore. I was just starting high school, making new friends and starting paying a lot of sports. At this point, I saw my mom 1 time a week, and the rest of the time I was taking care of my little brother. Took him to school, fed him, bathed him, helped him with homework, and put him to bed. I started to miss a lot of school due to him getting out early than I did, starting later, or just having days off that I didn't have. Teachers started to get worried and CPS talked to me. I lied and said nothing was happening. School year was over and summer break started. We started to see my mom more now, and the abuse got worse every day. A week after school was let out for summer break, my mom found out I had a boyfriend. She started to punch me in the head and stomach, calling me a whore and slut. She kept telling me to admit that I was a slut. My little brother watched it happen and was screaming and crying. I wouldn't stop crying due to my head hurt so much. She told me to get into the car and drove to the ER. We parked, and as we were walking in, she changed her mind and said that she didn't want people to stare at her. When we got into the car, she accused me of being pregnant and forced me to go to the store and buy a pregnancy test. When we got to the store, she refused to go in and told me to stop crying when I'm in there. When I returned, she told me to just admit that I was a slut or to get out of her house. I packed a bag and went to my best friend's house. I was there for a week before my mom came to look for me. She apologized and said that she wouldn't ever hit me again and that she was so sorry and she loved me. I believed her and went home. Mid-July comes around and my mom woke me up screaming that her boyfriend at the time touched my brother and I. She called the police and they questioned us. They came to the conclusion that she was on drugs and detained her. Police waited with my brother and I until CPS came. My mom was put on a 5150 hold and both my brother and I were placed grandparents' house. That night I remember waking up to his grandpa on top of me covering my mouth. I felt like I couldn't move and started to cry. When he was done, he wiped my stomach off and went back to his room. After the 72-hour hold my mom was on, CPS told me I could go back home, so I did. For the first 3 days everything was fine due to my mom sleeping the entire time from being medicated. When she finally woke up, my mom's boyfriend was with her, and she started to scream at me to get her belt. I did, and she started to hit me with it, told me that she didn't love me, that I was the reason why my brother got adopted all those years ago, and that she wished she never kept me. I went up getting away, and I grabbed my already packed bags and I ran until I couldn't anymore. I didn't have anyone to call me besides my brother's grandpa. He came and picked me up from a park 2 miles from my mom's house. I was with him for 2 weeks until CPS showed up and took me to a permanent foster home. When I was visiting my brother, his grandpa would assault me and then give me $50. I was extremely happy in my new home. I finally felt like I had people that loved me and wanted me. After being in the foster home for 10 months, the family wanted to adopt me. My mom told my social worker that she thought me and the father had an inappropriate relationship and that they weren't pushing reunification. I was then taken from that placement and put into another one with a foster mom and biological son. It was hell there, she screamed at me, didn't take me to doctor's appointments, didn't feed me, take me to school or pick me up at 10 p.m. from work. I ended up in the ER for 7 days because I had an infection. She refused to take me to see a doctor when I asked her to. She allowed her son to hit me. I kept telling my social worker, therapist, and CASA what was going on, and they told me I was being dramatic and that none of that was happening. Foster mom would tell everyone that I was a horrible foster kid and all I did was get into trouble. I started to heavily smoke weed and tried to stay at friends' houses as much as possible. My mom got into contact with me after 4 years of us having zero contact. She apologized to me and told me she was clean and asked if we could have a relationship. I was hesitant, but I didn't have any family, so I agreed. I went back to my home state and visited her and my brother for a week. Everything was fine. I'd never experienced this version of my mom before and I really enjoyed it. After 5 to 6 months of her talking to me all the time and being very nice to me, a flip switched and she started to ignore me for days at a time. Then it moved to weeks and months. I expressed multiple times that I really wanted a relationship with her and that I don't understand why she doesn't want one with me. Any time she would talk to me, it would be about her, and then she would hang up and I wouldn't hear from her for weeks again. All I wanted was for her to be my mom, and she can't be that for some reason. The last time we talked, she told me Andrew passed away, and I said, "Who was that?" "I'm sorry for your loss," and then she would NVM, and I haven't heard back from her for the last 4 months. Story 5. The way I and my brother are treated is different. I am a 17-year-old girl, but my father doesn't treat me right. I don't know why, but if he owes my brother just $2, he will find a way to give him that money right away. But with me, he's been owing me for a year and has never decided to pay me back. It's like he's saying, "You're my daughter, so I'm not going to pay you back." Isn't my brother your son too? How does that make sense? Every time there's something to do, it's always me. He says girls are supposed to be learning to do household chores and stuff, and I do it. But when it comes to my brother, he's like, no, he's a boy, he cannot do it. That's really biased, in my opinion. He's choosing boys over girls. The way he treats my brother is way different than how he treats me. I am the eldest child in our family, and my brother is the second after me. My father doesn't like me, because if my brother says, "Dad, I need some money," he'd be like, "I'll try to find a way to get you something." And then the next day, he comes up and brings him money, maybe the exact amount or even more. But when I ask for something, it's so difficult. One time, I have never touched even $50 from him. In order for me to get the money, I have to ask him every day, every single day, and he still does not want to give it to me. I have never touched $100 from my father in my life. If I get something, it has to be for school. But if it's for myself, I'll never get anything. Now I have graduated in 2024, and I still have got nothing from him. He didn't even go to my graduation. He didn't attend any of our graduations. Now that I've graduated, in order for me to get a job that I want, they told me I needed a bank account. But I'm still underage, so I was asking my father if he could help me get a bank account. He told me on my graduation day, but 2 weeks have passed, and I know he does not want to do it. He thought I would be like my mother. He thinks that I'm going to take all his nonsense like my mother did. Well, I'm not going to do that. He thinks that I'm gonna stay at home and just do women's chores and all those things. No, I'm going to be a big woman. I won't be like my mother, staying home and cooking for him all day while he treats her like trash. No, I'm not going to be like my mother. I'm going to be better. Story 6. I hate Moo fucking dad. I hate him and everything about him. My day is instantly ruined when I remember that he's still alive. He failed as a father to all 3 of his kids, and he can't accept that fact because he's so fucking proud and arrogant. So, he takes out his anger on us and hits us like it's going to fix a damn thing. All this money and respect he's boasting about having is going to mean nothing when he's dead, which is soon, hopefully. He thinks what he's doing is correcting me or disciplining me, but he's only creating an enemy out of his own fucking daughter. And that's embarrassing. He's so used to everyone around him following him like fucking dogs that he can't stand it when there is someone who does not need him at all. He fucked up with my older sister, so they don't speak now. He's fucking up with my older brother and doesn't allow my brother to pick my side because he's so fucking insecure about someone being sick of his shit. But my brother will eventually get older, he will no longer need to follow his commands, and he will get married, have kids, and will cut contact. Guess who's gonna be left to turn to? That's right. Me. It's all tracing back to me, but he thinks I'm just a stupid child who has no idea what the fuck I'm doing and will eventually crawl back. I've crawled back long enough. I've tolerated his bullshit for so long, but this is the fucking last straw. I will grow up to be better than him, I will study harder, top classes, get an elite job, all in the name of shaming him. I will embarrass him so badly. His own daughter growing up to be a better person than he ever was and ever will be. He simply cannot stand the fact that the world does not revolve around him and that nobody is going to live to his point of view. He didn't make me, he's not the leader of anyone, he's not the president. Even the president doesn't get people to follow his point of view. Laws exist, but so do criminals. My point is, he's not important. Whether he likes it or not, he's just another hunk and waste of skin and bones, a useless piece of God's energy and time. I will sculpt the best life possible, just to make him eat his disgusting words. I'm planning to cut him off once I head off to college in a different country. I won't even tell him I'm going. I will make sure nobody tells him I'm going. I don't want him at any of my graduations, birthdays, wedding. Fuck, I don't even want him at my funeral if I were to die before him. I'm using my whole life as a vengeance plan to fucking destroy him. Karma is real, and it is coming in the form of his own daughter.